My friend
Broadcasting.
Paul, how you doing? We're now live. We just went live on Facebook, so this is how we're doing them. We're recording them live. I always enjoy having a chat with you. I did already see you today at the JJM seminar on Zoom, but yeah, now we get to share some of our conversations. So the world is LA's on fire, and Australia's still playing silly buggers with restrictions left, right, and centre. I can do classes again tomorrow. Thanks for the 18 hours notice from the Premier. I planned 2 weeks, so it's bittersweet. I'm ready, but I'm not ready.
Yeah.
Interesting time.
Yeah, it is. Meanwhile, like you said, the border is closed. What's that?
How do you feel about it? I know you've just bought a house on the Sunshine Coast in sunny Queensland, so you're going to join us for a little bit longer. So that move's happening soon. When's that happening?
Look, I'm not sure the exact date or anything like that, but yeah, I got rid of one property, so I guess it makes sense to get another property. As you know, if you're spending a lot of money in rent, you may as well spend less money and own a property.
Yeah.
And at least have something to sell again. Yeah. So yeah, you do what I don't know. I'm not an investment advisor type person. I'm just someone who's trying to get along, minimize some tax and yeah, be able to eat into older age. That's it. Pretty simple goals, really.
Absolutely. So how do you think having like a martial arts background and mindset has helped you over the last month or two? Because I know you guys have taken some pretty extensive hits with your company as well.
Well, we just looked at diversifying the company. So we've just moved into a business, or started a logistics business, because that doesn't slow down during the virus. It speeds up. It's gone sort of 100 miles an hour. So everyone's struggling to keep up. And every time you hear a business says, "Hey, we're going online," you need the logistics that support that. So it's the engine of e-commerce. So for me, we have resources and money, and it wasn't. I don't very much like waiting for politicians to tell me when I can do something. So I thought I need to find a business that is deemed to be vital and necessary during virus. And the other thing too, if there's a second wave or a mutation of the virus, or in future a worse strain or version or biological, warfare style virus, then great. Not great, actually bad, but great for business, and great in the fact that, we're all about security and biological security, and dealing with threats and PPE and everything else. So for me, it's a bit of a challenge. I actually like the idea of having a new challenge and having a business or an element of the business that is not going to stop if there's any future disruption.
I'd be lying if I said I had loved everything that's happened, but it definitely has been an opportunity to practice going, okay, well, what have I got? What resources have I got to use? And just swinging. It feels like at times the last month we've just been swinging, and with the constant goalpost change as well, it feels like a war-like environment where it's like, okay, now it's changed. We're now going in like 18 hours, and you're like, oh, and you almost, you've got to take a couple of deep breaths or sleep on it before you take action, because when that you've got that heightened state of arousal, making a decision straight away is sometimes isn't the best decision that you can mate.
Yeah, if you're a little bit overwhelmed, you're probably better off just stopping and let the mind work through the problem and see what comes at the other side. Um, yeah, I agree. I think the thing that's, normally, I guess why this feels warlike in, I guess, in planning. I mean, it's very different. It's not, we're sitting back having a drink of wine and stuff during a very bad time, but it's a different type of warlike feeling. But as far as livelihoods and the effect on your life, it definitely is, you know, a huge thing. And there's so many people that are struggling right now because of that. So I think the bit that makes it warlike is not knowing and having your business closed down, or if there's a second wave, hey, they close your business down. Do you have the resources, the reserves to throw at that, or is that it? Is that the end game? Or the government changes its mind. So you're kind of dealing with the enemies, the enemy having a say on your business, on the battlefield, the virus, and also commanders, which is the government, making decisions that are affecting you, like what happens to soldiers on the ground when bosses make decisions, and you got to walk through it. And in the end, you just got to make the best with what both are doing, both are sort of causing for you. So it's an interesting situation. I'm not a fan of it. The other thing too is, most of us just can't stand politics, so we keep out of it. And then it's like musical chairs. All of a sudden, a virus pops up, and it's like, well, who's sitting in the chair at the moment? Like, like at the moment for them, it's a game, Labor and Liberal, or in the United States, Democrats and Republicans, or whatever, Tories and Labor in England. And it's just, so many people just don't give a shit about politics, which is why there is so much influence from minorities in politics, because you only need about just over 3% to have an effect in politics. And so well-organized minorities um, who are very strong political groups, you've got major political parties, you know, leaning on them to make their job easier rather than leading people and inspiring the masses. They just try and, you know, make the minorities happy and win government at its sway, and most people just don't give a shit. So we sit back and all of a sudden we end up in a virus situation like this, and we go, who's running the country at the moment? And I hope they're a good leader. And they tend to be just a bunch of politicians that we find out whether they can lead or not in actual crisis. So
Mm.
it's a little bit frustrating. Probably has a few people thinking about elections in the future, and thinking about what sort of people we get in power or things like that. But yeah,
It's interesting too. It's like the people that have their lives affected the most by it, maybe like business owners or people that already take risks, are like, well, you know what? It doesn't look like most people are sick of it, but and then all of a sudden we're now all responsible apparently for the old people down the road forever, and people want to make you feel like, oh, if you want to go back to work or you want to go back to jiu-jitsu, you're being irresponsible because my grandmother's going to die. And I was like, no, I'm not going to kill it. Like, we're not going to make her sick. I'm not going to go anywhere near her, but I want the ability to risk assess and travel around my country freely and accept the risk as I want myself. And like, I just don't understand why that's so controversial at the moment, that people think that you are all of a sudden irresponsible. And it's like, well, not if I don't go. Like, I wouldn't see an old person or an at-risk person. I know the same 100 people that I see every single day. So it's quite strange.
yeah. It's at the moment we haven't had a situation. None of us, I'm pretty sure, I 1918. Like, not too many people. If there's a few people that have lived through the Spanish virus. You know, we just don't know. So you don't know what you don't know, and something like this happens, and governments make decisions, and I guess good that they lean on medical experts. But it'd be good if we listen to some warnings beforehand, so we can make some smart decisions. But I don't know. There's a few things that are frustrating me at the moment. Not so much the virus itself. It's just a few things that like for instance, a lot of people donated money before the fires, and all of a sudden we find out that the people affected by the fires still haven't got money, and that just got lost with the virus. So it's like, why am I donating to the Red Cross, or why am I donating to
especially if they're only releasing
these groups? Well, we might need the money in future. What for, mate? Like, give them money. Like, what's going on? It's just I just find it's just all just odd, and these sort of things just bring it out. But
I dropped actually a significant amount of money. Actually, they got my heartstrings once, and then they got me again. I actually dropped a significant amount of money and found out that actually wasn't going to go to any people. It was actually going to go to the fire department, and the fire department got so much money that they can't even spend it on equipment for the next fire. So they asked if they could give it to people, but they're not allowed to. So now you've got this, like $57 million that people like expected to go help people. Now it's gone to a rural fire department that can't even spend it all. So I hope they buy a bloody good helicopter with it or something.
Yeah. Well, you almost need to just find out who's on the ground and just directly donate money to whoever's on the ground. It's just, I don't know. It's odd. It's like I'm a veteran, like yourself. I've never been a part of any of these veteran things, or really been exposed to anything to do with veterans. And there's a lot of people donating and supporting veterans. I don't, I'm not saying that it's not helping people, but I don't know. I'm disappointed if I see people sitting there in caravans wondering why aren't we being supported, and then people being asked to donate again. Like I'm not in a position to do something about it, but one day I might, because I'm just getting a little bit sick of it. And one day I might just put myself in a position, or put myself up and just say, hey, I'm going to run for a Senate seat or something, and I'm going to start calling some people out and holding people to account, because this is really starting to frustrate me.
So
we shall see.
What do you think of these LA riots? Have you been watching that from a violence perspective at all? I know I've kind of been hiding it from my news feed a little bit, and putting my head in the sand. I'm trying to like block out a lot of the negativity for that. But I was wondering if then maybe that's something that you've been watching at all.
I'm not an American. Obviously, I've got my children are half American, and I'm married an American. I have American family and so on. But I don't think it's my place to tell another culture and country, even though we share very similar values, or we share a similar language and things like that. It's still a different culture and a different way of thinking. I think it's very difficult. I think there is. I mean, you've got a country that's not that long ago, had a civil war over human rights and over slavery and so forth. And there's obviously going to be a residual effect of that to a degree. So there's that underlying thing. The other thing too is you've got police trying to be police, and you pull up a car, and I think about it myself. You pull up a car and you might get yourself shot. Like everyone's got a gun, so the police are sort of full on about keep just staying alive, and so And then if you don't empower them, if they don't have incredibly good training, which, we know it's, we give baseline training, we get them on the roads, then all these things put together, it's just so dangerous. And look, for instance, police make entry on a house in the United States, and people, they're going to be gunned up if they think they're serving a warrant on somebody, and that the people in that house could be violent criminals. Now, let's say they hit the wrong house, and this has happened, and you've got a Marine in that house, and he's been to war and he's armed. What's he do when someone busts into his house? Well, he's going to defend his house because he's got that right in the United States. He's got the weapons, so he starts firing at whatever's coming through the door, and then the police are like, "Oh, it's on," and oh, it's the wrong house, and we've killed a ex-veteran Marine. It's just so easy for things to escalate in the US, and
we are really we are really lucky.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. It's quite. Our war of independence failed. We lost.
We lost.
So we're still subjects of the crown.
What's next on the martial arts calendar for you this year? I know it's been hard to plan, and we normally have a few trips and whatnot. But now Queensland is opened up. Is there any chance that you'll be running some more KEF courses in Queensland? Are you going to do are you going to have any holidays yourself to do some training? Maybe come up to Townsville.
Yeah, that could happen. So we're going to get the KEF IC courses up again. Queensland, Brisbane, I think is going to be the first ones that roll out. We're going to have procedures in place, to meet COVID requirements. So so we plan to sort of do that. Normally it takes us a couple of months to get a course up and running and solid. So yes, the answer to that is yes, we are. We also have some navigation courses coming up, so we've sort of played in that space. Again, it's just something that people ask questions. How can you guys show us how to do this or do that? And we're like, okay, I think we can. And if it goes really well, we kind of lock it in. So yeah, there's a lot of soldiers, a lot of people in general who just like to actually learn how to use a map and a compass for a couple of days and head out. And so we've got that going on. And we've got other courses that we're standing up as well. So, there's a few interesting things about to launch, as well as a whole bunch of bands kicking around with kinetic logistics.
Yeah, that'll be fun. Look, I've done a bunch of your kinetic courses as like a self-defense kind of concepts type thing, and I like it. It's definitely a good way of thinking strategically and conceptually about self-defense outside of a combat sports kind of realm. I know you and Mal talked about it a little bit recently, but what are your thoughts on that now? And when you run those types of seminars, what do you think is some of the better bases for people to have for self-defense in combat sports? What would be your 2020 solution for cross training?
I'd say, look, do what.
I know it's a tough one. You got to try. You got to try to be a politician about it.
Nah. I'm just trying to be realistic about how much training people put in. I was going to say do what you really enjoy doing and so forth, but then you become comfortable with it, and the whole idea is to pressure test stuff, which is uncomfortable. So it's have a core of something that you really enjoy doing, but you've got to diversify your training a little bit, and you've got to have some skill sets. So You've got to, yeah. So you need to not just be able to do some things that aren't normal, in the combat sports. So practice doing some stuff like separating from people. Being like, how do I get away from someone on the ground? How do I get back up onto my feet? Which there's some good MMA training for that. How do I separate when in a clinch? Do some stuff where you can separate safely, because you don't want to have one option. Now, I might think I want to close with you because you're whacking into me, and all of a sudden there's a mate coming towards me. I don't want you to hold me while your mate comes up. So I need to be able to move you and separate and things like that. So there's a few things there to work on, and it's fun. It's fun to do stuff like that, bit different, make sure it's safe. But the main thing to know is it's about tactics. Tactics are so important. So, technique, if you look at that side of it, look, I'm not too worried about technique. It's like, hey, our army, we like an AK-47, and oh no, we'd rather a M16, or we prefer the Ostaya. That's your technique. It's the lead hitting the target. It's the hitting the threat with some lead. Now, I don't mind if your lead comes from an AK or it comes from an M16, but if you can't acquire your target and you can't be effective in laying rounds on that target before it fires upon you, then it doesn't matter what your technique is. So you might say, I love front kicks. Well, you'd want to be someone who can front kick under pressure. It doesn't matter. If you love to throw a punch, then can you throw punches under pressure? And, that's pretty much it in a nutshell. There's other sides to it, because obviously weapons, being armed or arming yourself with random things, and dealing with multiple threats, they're the elements that aren't normal sport elements. Obviously, there's combat sports that have weapons in it, but again, it's again, I spoke to Mal about this. Combat sports tend to be about a style. So you're promoting a style's concept of fighting. So the rules tend to be about that. MMA has tried to make that different, and mixed martial arts, so that everyone has an option. But that's not true now. It probably was a bit earlier on, but right now it's not true, because now it's big business. So, okay, now it's not style, but it's about paying public. So we have to change the rules again to keep it interesting. So there's always a reason, and it's not going to be baseline self-defense. There's always a reason for the rules. So whether the rules are there because it needs to fit within the advertising process, or it's got to keep a crowd moving and happy, or it's so when the UFC looked like a BJJ competition, with no limits on, and dudes just laying on the ground, stalling or something. It wasn't fun to watch. It just wasn't fun to watch. So if you're going to make it big business, you've got to change the rules.
It was definitely interesting, and I've recently in lockdown gone back and watched 1 to 10, and it's interesting to see how different headbutts and all these other things make it.
Headbutts are massive.
And you and I both appreciated that about and kudo. And what people don't understand too is, like, I suppose sometimes I get pinned as an MMA guy, but the only reason I really love MMA is because it's the best problem solving tool for me to be a martial artist that just wants to train to be better at the martial arts. And jiu-jitsu and Thai boxing are both really good tools for that for me as well, to allow me to train an area of my martial arts. Like before my knees were shot, I used to love wrestling, like just takedowns. Let's just do takedowns, and loved wrestling because I found that was the best thing for MMA and practicing takedowns. And like most of my takedowns in a gi are now still ones that I can do in both of them, and it's still the same system. It's either legs, body locks, or throws, or head snap, stuff that go in between the two things. Just means I've got to learn less, but they're all tools, right? So grappling, I think grappling is definitely something that you can do right into old age. And the way the Japanese train judo, they have a really good culture of keeping old guys around as well. But they're definitely tools. And I suppose the more that you know, the more tools and the more resources you have for those things, which is probably why you're so good at those things, because you've got more tools and more resources because you've studied more arts for longer. Now, I do have a real interesting question here. So we're going live on a question here. So Daniel's asked if you believe police should be trained in jiu-jitsu, or give your thoughts on this. So your company has actually done a small amount of training with specialist police groups, and also that Kinetic Fighting is responsible for training the Australian military in a whole bunch of different areas to do with close quarter combat and personal protection, etc., etc., etc. Would you like to have a crack at answering that question for Daniel, Paul?
Yeah, sure. Look, the thing is with government agencies, whether it be the army or whether it be police and so on, is the time frame that they've got for training. So they've normally got a fairly short time frame, and you can't, just going over the techniques when this is how it's been done in the past is like trying to teach someone an osotogari, like a bloody judo throw, or this lock or a wrist lock, like these things take finesse and time to be good at. And the problem with that is you don't have the time. So you've really got to show them how to tactically be sound and to achieve their objectives, and how to use the tools at their disposal, and understand, I guess, how to get the most out of the least amount of tools. And then you can have a culture. That another thing is to create a culture. So one big thing we're doing in the army is, we're exposing people to ACP, and the whole idea of that is tactics over technique. So I've got my rifle, something happens, and away I go, and all of a sudden someone's on me, and I just automatically react, right? And I make it happen, and then other people around me are going to support me in a trained way, and that is the best way to deal with a close quarter threat, is to bring weapons to bear and outnumber people. It's as simple as that. Now, developing personal skill sets, then okay, if you can build a culture that has people wanting to do BJJ or anything. So the army now, there's combat sporting competitions now. There's the Australian Defence Force Martial Arts Association. Now, you would know, Ian, even from your time in the army, and definitely when I joined the army, you couldn't touch each other. You were frowned upon if you went and outside the martial arts. So it's taken me my entire life around the army, but I entered the army and you weren't allowed to touch each other. I've left the army, and now everyone learns unarmed combat from recruit onwards and officer cadet onwards, and there is an inter-brigade combat sporting competition. I feel tired, but I feel happy. So there's a different culture now and a different way of thinking about it all. So that's it, and you'll have guys who are really, really good in the army at BJJ and other things, judo, whatever it is, doesn't matter, wrestling. And but as long as they're doing the tactical elements of their training with the ACP, develop personal skill sets, no problem. Do what it is that's good for you, that you feel good about. And the ICCs on the brigades have that, and away they go. So, and there's no issue, with guys going outside of the brigades now and training at places like your place. That's not an issue for the army anymore. So it's a wonderful change of culture, and it's very good. And when you listen to me talk, you go, of course. Well, the of course wasn't there. It might be of course now in hindsight, but it was hard work, and It's amazing to see how things are now.
Yeah, and the police will do have like a strange culture in being able to deal with that. Any government organization, there's a lot of naysayers in those things, and there's still martial arts itself and violence is categorically misunderstood. Where people think if you study it, you become more violent, but it's like driving a car. It's like you need to study before you drive the car. You need to understand what's happening in a violent situation through conflict and exposure to sparring rounds and live sorts of violence to be able to have the confidence to know that if that happens, it's not going to be the end of the world, and you can then measure your response correctly. So
it takes a lot of skill to be less than lethal. So you either develop skill in people, or you teach people to, operate effectively together quickly. And that's probably the biggest thing that we're getting now. Like we're doing a lot of work with South Australian police, and they're realizing, the way we're applying, I guess, the tactical elements of what we do, they're loving it, because we're making people that are not martial artists effective members of a team in dealing with unarmed scenarios. And for police, they would rather deal with some. I mean, if you don't have the confidence or personal skill sets to deal with an escalation of violence, then what do? You're going to fall back to, well, hang on, I'll get the taser out. I'm going to get tools out, batons, tasers, or a firearm. And and the other element to this is that you're carrying a firearm. So every time you're involved in an unarmed altercation with someone, it's a gunfight because you brought the gun. You've got one on your hip. So if you end up rolling around and it all goes south and you're not doing, you're sort of behind the eight ball, you may find yourself disarmed. And, that's a dangerous situation.
Now, here's another interesting question for you that I wanted to pose to you today before we get too long, because we've been here for 30 minutes already. I'm going to try and keep this under 40, and then we might end the broadcast and have a wine with each other online. If you could only pick one martial art that you have a black belt in to train for the rest of your life, what would it be?
It'll be something to do with ground fighting. So whether that's being a Newaza specialist like Kosen Judo or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And the reason for it is everything else hurts me. So, I love throwing people and I love punching people. I'll never get sick of doing that. Like get sick of enjoying that. But my body, like it just hurts and I'm busted. But it's bizarre. I find that being on the ground, moving around, I can be young. I can, well, until I'm out of breath. But I can sort of, I can keep doing it. So yeah, it's interesting. It makes a lot of sense now because I remember seeing older judo guys who they would show techniques and stuff, but if they did something, it would be Newaza. They'd just be on the ground doing ground fighting, and now I know why.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, you're preaching.
And you know what? I did it in Kudo. Like you had to fight to get your black belt, as you know. You have to have rounds. But you know what I did? I grabbed people. I did lots of headbutts because I love headbutts, and I threw them down and I went for the win on the ground because it didn't hurt me as much. But standing there with, I
ask myself that all the time because I want to train until I'm old. It's in my blood. I feel like it's in my DNA. Like when I finally found that I wanted to do it, I was like, I want to do it like forever. I want to sit next to those mats for as long as I can and do what I can. But after having 5 knee surgeries, I do wrestling now. When someone unbalances me, I feel my knees slide, and then you're limping for the next couple of days. But I find on the ground, doing jiu-jitsu, you're framing with your body in different ways and just making do. And it changed the way I did jiu-jitsu too. I do less. I still do a bit of it, but I do less less standing up and less going to the single leg than I did when I was fighting mixed martial arts. But it's definitely a question worth asking, and I'm not surprised by that answer either. I think I was talking to some other black belts years ago that had done lots of stuff, and they're like, "Oh, you got to get in the gi in because when you're an old man."
Oh yeah, gis are fantastic. You want to keep
training.
hold of someone and stop them from running away from you. Come here, buddy. You're going too fast. I'm just gonna take a hold of that gi, and you can stay right here, and let's slow this down a little bit.
All right. Actually, funny enough, we got 5 more minutes left on the clock, and Anton's got one more question. Sorry, that's my dogs. Where you get out of here? This is what happens when you
Anton, the weapon.
All right, here's the question.
Oh, was that? Oh, so you're talking about
the guy that
in the United States?
Yeah, from what I understand, he had a history where he had been charged with similar things before. I think the New York Police Department probably could have put him on a leash.
I don't think he's New York, mate. Was it New York State or something?
I could be wrong.
I don't think it's. Yeah, I don't think he's New. I don't think he's New York Police.
Yeah, wherever it was, I believe he had a history. But
yeah. Look, apparently that's the go. That's what I heard. He's had 5 previous things, and the thing is, he had his knee on a guy who had been subdued, across his neck for 9 minutes. I mean, it's odd, It's like, okay, I'll say this, and okay, thanks, Anton. There you go. So, and David, yep. At least there's 2 people watching us. That's good.
Yeah.
So, look, we've captured Taliban, and we wouldn't treat them like that. Like, that's just odd. The guy's placky cuffed or handcuffed, laying face down on the ground. Not to mention you picked him up for fraudulent check or something. I just, and again, as an Australian, maybe I just find it bizarre. It's just odd, and to feel like you got to sit there and lay on the guy. And you got when they showed the other side of the car, there was another 2 people laying on him. So surely these guys understand about positional asphyxiation. You can't lay on people and not expect them to die. That's kind of what happens if they can't. To me, I just think it was bizarre. And he was saying, "Hey, I can't breathe." It's like,
yeah, unfortunately, until we train them like soldiers and they did physical training every day, it's untenable. But they definitely obviously have some problems over there. But I don't
saying that, Ian, you're never going to see. You're not. Look, do you really think you're going to see Australian police do that?
No, definitely not.
No, because the ethical standards and the requirements, and I'm not saying American police aren't good at what they do, but the requirements and the expectations of the public are huge. You're just not going to see it. So, yeah, it's just weird. I don't understand why he did it. One thing I'll tell you what I find even more weird. How can the prosecutor come back and go, well, we looked at it and we need to see whether there was a criminal element. It was horrid and it was this and it was that and it was bad. But, hey, we didn't see it was criminal. What? What? What wasn't criminal about killing someone that didn't need to be killed? And someone popped up about the security guards, and I think it was a casino, Melbourne casino or something. I don't know, one of the casinos in Australia where they were on top of someone. And yes, but they're not police. And I think the casino guys are pretty au fait with it now, because obviously we have coroner's inquests and a whole bunch of stuff drops out in Australia any time this happens.
Tommy's on here, security company, and they teach it. So yeah, exactly. Yeah. People need it. We, especially in the age of internet, like education.
Oh, well,
there. You know, like we should know better.
Yep. That's not coronavirus either, by the way. That's a cough that I've had ever since Afghanistan. So
let's leave
nobody freak out about the cough.
Let's leave on a positive note. What's one awesome thing that's happened to you in lockdown, Paul?
I've found some nice wines.
Yep. You and I both. Thanks for jumping on today with me, Paul. It was fun. I'm sure there's a few little gold nuggets in there for people, and we'll do this again. I'd like to do it regularly because you and I talk on the phone quite regularly, and we generally 75 to 95% of the time end up talking about martial arts and something fairly useful. So I appreciate it. Thank you, mate.
Thanks, mate, and thank you to David and Anton for watching. And so anyone else that did turn up.